Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have a video here just talking really about the movement forwards with crypto exchanges and how crypto could be potentially used in terms of deposits and withdrawals moving forward. This comes in light of an interesting news announcement in the last 24 hours around a Thai-based bank buying out fully a crypto exchange. Now, it's not perhaps an exchange that everyone knows very well, but the point is very interesting, and certainly some things that I've learned in various different events that I've been attending over the last 12 months or so, and particularly the ones related to central bank digital currencies, the Digital Pound Foundation, etc., where big conversations have been occurring around this mentality that eventually, predominantly, banks will be in full control of crypto assets and the way that we use them, and potentially the way we trade and also buy and sell, etc. So let's talk about this a bit more detail. Before we do, don't forget, of course, to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And welcome to the channel if you are new to us. Hopefully you find some topics and discussions informative and learn something along the way. We've got a load of different topics, as you can see on the screen here. Different assets that we cover a lot, and we've got a lot more interviews coming out faster than ever before with some top leaders in the crypto and blockchain space, as well as finance in general. We've got a huge lineup coming over the next week or two in regards to XTC, CEO, of course, Sunil. We've also got people from the banking institutions such as Allianz and Lloyds lined up as well, just to talk about trade finance, blockchain's integration with this, and how the whole kind of like real world asset tokenization is really going to be taking forward. And it kind of leads really to that point of how fast these banks have been reacting over the last few years to catch up with this essentially new era of potential finance, both from a technological perspective and the solutions or perhaps services that could be available to us as users, which we in honesty in the last few years, certainly as more and more people got used to cryptocurrency or the application of them, and indeed the access to them, we've noticed that we could be having a bit more power or control ourselves with the responsibility of our own private keys and our own assets. And of course, there's a bit of dilemma of the pros and cons of that. And of course, regulations are firing left, right, and center across the globe, especially here in the UK, where we have recently seen the legislation and laws being passed around digital currencies, stablecoin usage, and cryptocurrencies in general. And of course, other trade and electronic trade acts going through as well. It's all very coincidental and good timing. And many other countries are following, if not have already completed this process already. Now, the topic that I wanted to bring to the attention here is this. And it really kind of coincides with this thought process about where is crypto actually going. And many people always ask me, whether it's in my WhatsApp group or other platforms, etc., or even at events, we talk logically about how things could move forward with cryptocurrency usage and the application that we are able to use, buy and sell pretty much freely. In most cases, a lot of our banks have cancelled the opportunity for us to be able to do that, and we'll go into that a bit more detail as well, and as to why, the psychological aspect of why they are doing this. And it kind of like starts really relating to make sense in our minds that perhaps this methodology of us potentially being decentralized or having full control is perhaps not necessarily going out the window completely, but certainly being taken away bit by bit. So let's talk about this. So Thailand, this is the Kasikorn Bank. Now, apologies, I don't know too much about that particular bank, but what I do know is they've obviously got a lot of money, as most banks do, and they have taken a majority stake in the Satang crypto exchange for $103 million. That's not a small amount of money. Now, of course, there's probably loads of things involved in this in terms of the variables of why it's that much or why they haven't taken a full stake. I envision, and this is, I guess, a prediction in some ways, I envision over the next 5 or 10 years, similarly to how we will see with crypto assets in general, where we will see more and more diversification, but we will see probably a bit more monopolization and a lot more collaborations with crypto assets or projects in general that they may combine, and whether they create their own unique generalized token from that or they continue to operate as individual companies will be remaining to be seen. But I do think we will see a significant drop in the availability of crypto assets in terms of how many there are. And I truly from kind of statistical trend aspects, believe that we would lose at least 50 to 70% of the crypto assets that currently exist. And of course, there's, we're going into the sort of, 5-6 digits, of course, now of crypto assets that are available on markets and things that we can track on things like CoinMarketCap. And in that transitional period, we also, in these next few years, going to see humongous development where we've gone from all these roadmap terminologies of the crypto projects in general to actually identifying, these guys over here are already doing that solution very well. We can't catch up with that. We don't have the resource. We don't have the money, whatever it might be. So they reformat their tokenomics, and their aspirations in the roadmap and what they want to achieve as a company. And I think in that process, as you're developing, which is a great time to be doing it in these bear and winter markets. So when the bull run comes in, the marketing kicks in, the hype kicks in, you can gain more traction and more liquidity into your projects. That aside, I do think that if you're going to be working and utilizing your own assets and projects within the real world and that whole entire multi-billion use case opportunity based on population statistics, this is an interesting time to see that development. And I think whilst we look at that from the crypto asset perspective, I do also think and believe that we will see this in the crypto exchange aspect as well. Now, as I said, excuse my ignorance, but I don't know this bank and I don't know this crypto exchange, but it raises my ears when I see the amount of money that is being involved in here. So Thailand's Kasikorn Bank, also known as K-Bank, said it has acquired 97% shares in the parent company of Satan Crypto Exchange, operated in the country since 2017. So probably came about at the beginning stages of that previous bull run to the one that we saw in 2021, which is understandable. And this is, I truly believe, around that period of time, certainly 2018 to 2020, banks really started to prick their ears up about the power of crypto assets and the exchanges as well, and how much perhaps potentially, albeit not humongous percentages, but a lot of money went out of banks, guys, over the last few years into stocks and into crypto assets. And stocks can predominantly be controlled significantly because most of the banks either are the parent companies of a lot of the stock exchanges or the platforms we use, or they at least have a lot of strict control mechanisms around that. And that's what they didn't have over crypto other than until more recently. So we take this, according to a filing, the deal has a valuation of 3.705 billion Thai baht, $102.8 million. So a lot of money here. And this is, would you argue, is a small case in the whole world's remit, but that's a big chunk of money. And a lot of crypto assets, if you can think about the founders here, where they've got a bit of a dilemma over these next few years. A lot of exchanges have lost liquidity, a lot of trust mechanism. Obviously, here in the UK with the FCA regulation, new rules, a lot of exchanges pulled out of the UK market. That's a lot of people because the UK is one of the biggest users of crypto assets in the world. But outside of that, a lot of countries are blocking, banks are blocking. Crypto assets have no choice but to remove themselves out of the equation, and they got two options. They either adhere to the rules and come back in the near future, or they just go, no, not worth it. We'll concentrate on our own miniature regions, etc. So there's all these dilemmas coming into fruition now and in the future as well. So there's going to be a lot of chopping and changing around here. But there was a couple of other instances in the past, and I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple of these things. Now, the other way around is that a lot of the crypto exchanges are so big, they could buy out small, potentially medium-sized banks, but equally on the other side, they could be bought out in either full capacity or in small amounts as well. And here is an example of where Binance in the past, I think this is like 2022, where it says with over $1 billion to spend, Ways buying a bank, and that is open to minority staking and outright acquisition. So this is where it goes back to my point that we may see that whole entire diversification going on of assets and crypto exchanges, that actually this could reduce significantly. And the same with banks as well. Do you honestly think like the huge banks like Barclays, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, etc. are going to sit by and allow these small banks to take more and more market share, albeit small amounts in comparison over the last 100 years or so? Do you honestly think they're going to sit by? Of course they're not. They're going to wait until these banks and these crypto exchanges become so valuable they'll buy them out, because what do? They take that entire audience base, they can take the whole entire solutions, they can offer people who already work there and say, hey guys, we'll pay you the same amount, maybe even a bit more, who knows. I'm sure AI will take a lot of those roles anyway over the next few years, and take that residual database, that data of people and the use base, and have a solution there in implementation already. So these banks at the moment, and certainly from the events I've been to recently, are still figuring out things. They're still working out frameworks. They're still obviously trying to align themselves with the new regulations. And they're still, in my opinion, very far behind the aspirations of blockchain, with the exception of some huge banking or financial institutions. Of course, JP Morgan are quite far ahead because they have their own coins, they're using their own blockchain technology, and moving forward very fast with all of that capacity, including potentially operating within the CBDC frameworks as well. So there's all these really interesting things coming ahead, but at the same time, we've seen a multitude, not just from these ones in 2022, but constantly seeing crypto being blocked by banks, particularly here in the UK, and they're always infiltrating information and news around things like FTX, as an example, criminal activity, etc. And rightly so, in that sense that they need to be cautious of this. But equally, on the other hand, we always had that argument that, well, hang on a minute, you let people gamble as much as you want with their money, and you don't block that. I mean, some banks do give notifications like, hang on a minute, you're spending too much here, we'll give you reminders, but they don't really stop you. But with crypto, it's a completely different kettle of fish. They don't have, we as users don't have a say in it. We're just stopped from being able to do it. And in some cases, banks have maybe not stopped it and given like restrictions. So here, for example, with NatWest giving daily limits of payments towards crypto exchanges. And that's kind of maybe a partially good thing. I think if you're going to be spending more than $5,000 a day, you would probably be in a different consortium or banking institution with that kind of money flying around. I mean, I'm not crazy enough personally to be spending even a few £100 a day, let alone thousands of pounds. And even if I was to do 100 or something a day, I would be thinking a million times before I did it. That's just me. I'm sure that, well, I know obviously there's many people out there with a lot of money, way more than I have, that will just maybe not think twice. But I do get the principles of this back and forth. But my point being is that what's happening, and based on discussions and information I've been getting from events, is the banks are gearing up, guys. The banks are gearing up to offer crypto asset services in the very near future. And I would not be surprised to see this by at least 2025 as a minimum. And it was this kind of topic. I didn't want to do a video on this really until I started seeing a few more confirmations behind what's potentially could happen here. And my philosophy behind that was, okay, the only thing I see that working is the banks are going to take a lot of time and resource to catch up. The easiest and most simplest way, like any bank would do with any kind of situation like this in the future, or any kind of advancement where they think they're going to lose share or lose the control mechanism over us as users, is to buy and purchase institutions, companies that are upcoming. Look at all these startups. Don't think it's bizarre that the likes of Google, etc., fund startups. Why do you think they do that? They do it because they know that if they provide the funding for that, they're going to get it back significantly in return investment by buying the companies back in the near future. And a lot of people out there, including crypto exchanges, projects, particularly in crypto, I'm not saying they're rug pulls, but they have a predominant factor in their minds to go, okay, yes, of course we do want to do something interesting and exciting, but they're not going to say no in 2 years' time when a big company or a bank comes towards them and says, we're going to buy you out for $1 million, 5 million, 10 million. I mean, it's a lot of money to a lot of people. If someone turned around to me, like if I started up a company, for example, and I'm scraping the barrel, or it's getting frustrating, but the user base is growing, etc. Of course, I would love to push it as much as I can, but there will be some part of you in your mind in 3 or 4 years' time, and a company or a bank comes to you and says, hey, Simon, I'm going to buy you out for 10 million. How does that sound? You go, okay, I don't have to do any work anymore, and just go, yeah, off you go. I always remember some crazy mobile games like Flappy Bird. Do you remember? I'm pretty sure when the maker of that game, and he was getting flooded with investors, and he was like, I've had enough now. I just wanted to create a fun game, not be bombarded with all this monetary values of like hundreds of millions of pounds and stuff. So it's really interesting. But this point here, if you remember, we did a video on this it might have even been a YouTube short back when we did this, back in September, only a couple of months ago, Deutsche Bank to hold crypto for institutional clients. Now, I always said this, it will, and I can quote this, in fact, if you go on my LinkedIn, if you want to, there's a post I did about this, and a few people from the Digital Pound Foundation chipped in as well to kind of agree on some of the things I was saying. I said, just mark my words, this is the stepping stone approach. You will have institutional clients, and there's no doubt in my mind that all these banks will then learn from this trial mechanism, get all that liquidity, institutional level money, guys, humongous amounts of money, more than we can fathom in our minds, and then it will come to the consumers. We are our own separate economy. There we go. We are our own economy, and we're own our level of finance. When banks look at us as maybe ants or something, but that institutional level gives them the stability, the foundation, the resource capacity, the ability to build, create infrastructures, everything, and then come to the consumers with this offering. And I have no doubt in my mind, I'm adamant that at least by 2025 we will start seeing significant narratives and communication from our banks, because bear in mind, in 2025 the RTGS system switches over to the new one. The engine begins next year, 2024. And the predominant factor that by November 2025, the RTGS system replaces the old one with the integration of things like ISO 20022, standardization compliance of the messaging services of finance, the digitalization of finance fully. This is very coincidental timing. That's why I benchmarked the 2025 marker. So we loop this question back around as to like, well, what are we actually doing with crypto? And people always say to me, Simon, is crypto actually a scam? Is it like actually going to go anywhere? And I say, look, there's going to be windows of opportunity for us to make money off that, of course. And with blockchain, there's traceability. People can look back in the historic information of all our movements of money, similarly to how they can do now potentially with the likes of cash. I mean, here in the UK, I always make that point, very interesting point, that I think it was November last year, they said that all the really old notes couldn't be used anymore. What does that mean? Well, it means that people who've been hiding money in their mattresses and stuff now have to go to the bank to then transfer that across to the new plastic paper money, for a better word, or just be digitalized. Because what they'll find is when they go to the post office or to their banks to transfer this money in, majority of the banks are closed down now, or they're just machines. And there's hardly any people. In fact, most banks don't even have operatives at the weekend anymore. You just be able to, the door opens, someone's there to open the door, point you out to what machine to use for deposits, withdrawals, services, etc. And there you go. Cashless society, etc., all accumulating at the same time. In fact, there was a crazy statistic that the mission for banks anyway was to be as cashless as possible by 2030. And of course, the 2020 pandemic increased 14 or 15,000% increase in the utilization of digital wallets or banking systems, and use of cashless operation in stores, shops, etc. That's staggering, 14,000%, and it's kind of, well, that's another day's topic. Like, I have my own thoughts and theories around all that stuff anyway. But the point being is that we're on a pathway to be thinking now that, okay, banks do what they do, not what they say. They're blocking crypto exchanges, but now all of a sudden, huge banks like Deutsche Bank here are now opening crypto services. So for years, these banks, not just Deutsche Bank, this was one example, for many years, banks have blocked us or given us notifications that crypto is dangerous, blah, 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 and kind of right in some instances, in the sense, before regulation, you have to be cautious, and they were doing the responsible thing through the FCA, kind of a push from them and the government, etc. But the point being is that it's like with any of these rich people that you perceive to be wearing capes, like they look like the heroes for us on social media, etc., when actually they're either coordinating things to the demise of society, or they're doing things to make a lot of money off you. That's why I don't get emotional or attached to any particular individuals in those kind of capacities, and certainly companies as well, because I know what their end goal is. Well, there's one social media in particular that got taken over recently, of course, and is very much gathering a humongous database of people, their behavioral statistics, analytics, and now introducing very interesting services to become the all-in-one apps, etc. I'm not going to name them. I think you know what I'm talking about, but that's the principle. We all adhere to this, think it's exciting and enjoyable and fun, when actually they're almost working against us in the reality of things. So back to the point here is these banks have been telling us something. We have no choice to either move our money or utilize other areas or find a different way. And then within a 2-3 year period, after the whole spectrum of a market crash, and they've got all our money back because we're scared, and we go and put it back into our banks, or a majority of people do anyway. I don't anymore. I don't fear it at all. And then all of a sudden, regulation, digitalization laws, and legislation coming in as well, and then they're turning around to tell us that they are providing digital services, crypto services. Here, for example, again, I think we covered this, is back in October last year, 2022, Bank of New York Mellon Corp, adding cryptocurrencies to assets that it holds as a custody manager. Now, asset management is absolutely huge, as is insurance and finance as well. I've got 2 videos coming out hopefully this week that I took information from the TFDI event that I was at last week. Obviously big aspirations toward trade finance in general, but it was absolutely mind-blowing when we opened up the mindset around insurance of finance, particularly in the trade finance industry, and the use of blockchain, and also asset management in general as well, platforms to be used, blockchain to be used, etc., etc. So I totally understand that when we look at cross-border aspirations, the ability of blockchain, the speed of which, the validation, the processing, digital trade documents now being legalized as well, the amount of cost saving and the amount of ability of mass adoption and mass usage over these coming years are going to be absolutely significant. In fact, the video that I introduced last couple of days with Swiplux, Philippe, we talked about 400 odds million crypto users worldwide out of an 8.1 billion population. It's around 5.6% of the population, and actually come 2025 alone, we will probably surpass, or at least to 2030, surpass that 2 billion mark of crypto users. I think it'd be a lot more than that, but that's very conservative. But that's the point, is that the banks woke up 5-6 years ago properly. They only really looked at trade finance in 2020, and they've caught up, and the regulation coincides with that. The pressure from banks to governments is significant, and vice versa. And FCA here in the UK, and whatever regulation parties they're called in your countries worldwide, will be doing and have been doing similar things. So we have this now adoption from an institutional level where they're going, what's all this stuff then? Tokenization, real world assets, what's this? Oh, that's very exciting. Well, it saves me money and it's faster. It improves the economy. Fantastic. Makes me loads more money. Great. Then they will bring it to the consumers, and mark my words, because the ISO 222 compliance has been going left, right and centre. In fact, any UK bank, you can simply go on, for example, NatWest, Santander, whatever bank you want, and you type in the find or the search criteria of that ISO compliance. They all have documentation on it. In fact, if you're a small business here in the UK, I'd be very surprised if you haven't had already a document through the post or an email about this and what it means to your business and why they're doing it. And this is the whole point. The institutional business level gets taken care of first, obviously, because that's where the big money is, and then the consumers, which is a huge part of the pie as well, just not as big just yet as the business and the institutional level. So we go back to that point of, is decentralization even true? Is it even a reality to us? Well, Bitcoin is the most decentralized, probably the most decentralized option that we've got. But the question is, who's now holding a lot of this, and how? We know there's stories around the US government holding something like 200,000 worth of Bitcoin, and other governments are holding it. So you're sitting there going, well, hang on a minute, they've got all of this Bitcoin, therefore they could have a control in the sense of a marketplace or this, that and the other. What if they just accumulate as much of it as possible, like the institutions and the ETFs, etc., to the point where people just can't get hold of it unless they get Satoshis or whatever? And then all of a sudden they bring out banking services and have a gigantic amount of liquidity already available at the cheapest possible prices, by the way, because they've crashed the markets already simultaneously around the world and bought us out without us even knowing. it's far-fetched, but I think it stands as a position of us as users or people that are trying to make money on this to really understand that how many more windows of opportunity do we have. I truly believe 2025 will be one of the last significant ones. Yes, we will see growth at 2030, beyond that as well. But what I mean is for early adoption or people to potentially make some good money over these next coming years, it's one of the last opportunities, if not maybe, just maybe the last one before things really change. Because when it does open to the banks, guys, we're talking about billions upon billions of people around the world who don't even need to worry about crypto exchanges and stuff like this anymore. We will have integrated digital identities, KYC, blockchain integration built in, AI, IoT, all of this in place for us as users immediately, straight away. Everyone can have access to it and utilize it the way they want. Stable coins will become extremely prominent, and not necessarily fan tokens, but what I mean by that is like that branding token, the company tokens, the tokenization of the economy. And I've got a video coming out this week about the tokens economy, especially the to earn mechanism, learn to earn, play to earn, eat to earn, all this stuff. It makes a valuable representation of what's to come. And I can throw in terminologies like basic universal income, which is coming significantly over these coming years. It was deemed a conspiracy theory about 5-10 years ago when I first talked to about people, but it's now coming into fruition. It's being trialed most countries around the world right now, and it's all part of the plan. And this is not some crazy cynical video that I'm trying to put together here. It's more about planning ahead and thinking logically that actually sometimes things aren't what they seem to be, and measuring what's actually happening. That terminology of do what they do, not what they say, is so apparent, and you have to really look for it. And a lot of media out there are getting very clever with titles and things and how they demonstrate this. Companies and institutions and banks are getting very clever with how they present this information, and not necessarily skew titles and things like that, but you have to understand hang on a minute, what's the history of this? What have they been saying and doing? And then all of a sudden coming to us with what they are doing, and you're sitting there, well, if you were against it, why are you now doing it? It's plain and simple, guys. So that's what I wanted to get across, some thought process around the potential future of crypto, the banking's perhaps application towards this over the coming years as well. And don't be surprised to see gigantic mass adoption from 2025 onwards, because more platforms will be opening this up. We've seen what PayPal have been up to the last 12 months with their adoption of crypto assets. And us as users, I think how many hundreds of millions of people use PayPal now have access immediately to crypto. And this is where it gets really interesting, guys. And who's owning all this stuff? Who's owning all the ETFs? Who's owning all the big chunks of money that we have asset control in as well? And there will come a point in the next few months, maybe when the FTX thing slips away a bit more and things improve around the world with all the battles, etc. There will come a point in 2024, in my opinion, and it may relate around to that ETF launch of Bitcoin. It may relate to the halving event, who knows? But there will come a point in 2024 into 2025, especially with the RTGS launch, where there will be a significant turnaround. The biggest we've ever seen, kind of understandable really, because most markets do that. They get bigger each time there's a cycle, but I think this would be a huge one. It could potentially be one of the last ones with significant gain, and certainly one where there will be significant change in the way crypto is looked at from institutional, governmental and banking levels, and how we will be able to have access and be able to use it as well. So think about it, guys. This is not saying things will or won't happen. It's about open mind and thinking ahead about this, guys, because we're on the doorstep of significant change, and it relates to so many other things. I could be all day talking about. I think hopefully a lot of you get the grasp of what I go on about in videos subtly about what is to come, especially by 2030, and this is certainly one big area of it. Guys, I'm going to wrap this video up there. Let us know what you think. Do you think that crypto will be fully accessible for us for years to come? Do you think we still have the ability of decentralization and the opportunity to continue to battle things like CBDCs and centralized systems? Or do you think that we've been played a bit, and that we may only have limited options to take what we can and then leave before they take it from us in general completely? Let me know what you think in the comments. I love these kind of topics and thought processes. Nothing is right or wrong, obviously. So your pros and cons would be very much appreciated. And it just builds our education collectively, and certainly the thought process collectively as well. That's what this channel is about. And that is what I want from you guys, the community too. So thanks for watching this video. Let's catch up soon on this topic, see how it progresses either way. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next topical video. Take care. Bye bye.